Hello and welcome to Gangs All Here. My name is Ryan Sampson, the host and producer of the show, but he is the Jets beat writer, Brian Costello. Today is Thursday, November 14th, week 11. The New York Jets are 3-7 after a blowout loss to the Arizona Cardinals. They are now looking at the barrel of the gun of the season being over, and a lot of talk has now shifted for this franchise and this team from the fans, media somewhat, of where does this team go from here? And we're in a unique situation on this show to discuss this franchise, how they got here, where they're at right now, and where do they go moving forward. This is not going to be your typical episode today, and I appreciate Coz just, we were going to discuss this beforehand, and he agreed to this. Like, we're going to talk about how this team got here. And Coz, before I get to anything else, how you doing, man?
I'm good. I'm good, Ryan. Living the dream. Ready for the bye week. We're looking forward to the bye week.
It's sad we're at that point of the season, right? Like we're now doing off-season talk in week 11 because of how
Well,
this
those
franchise has gone.
pretty typical. I mean, unfortunately, it's for the Jets fans. This is where we've been at for a long time now. I mean, other than I feel like 2 years ago, right? There was a lot of hope at this point. They were 6-3, if I remember correctly, and then. But yeah, usually this point of year is when we're looking at tankathon and starting to look at mock drafts, and I think that's what I wrote, off the Arizona game. It's mock draft time. The top time to stop talking about the playoffs. And yes, they're still mathematically alive, so who knows? The AFC is still weak, but there could be some miraculous run here. But I don't think how you could think, that the Jets are going to do that because I think people, Ryan, are looking at it and going, I've heard some people, oh, well, look, the Broncos are 5-5. They're not that good. The Bengals have struggled. The Colts are switching quarterbacks. Like, they're looking at the other teams, but look at the Jets. So it's like, do you think the Jets can realistically go 6-1 right now? I don't see how you can think that. The Jets part of the equation is what's not working out.
No, it's not. But before we break down even further here, I want to get your initial thoughts on, you know, after watching the film, talking to the players this week, what did you make of Sunday's debacle in Arizona?
Phew, I mean, shocking. Just how bad they were. I think we talked about it last week, Ryan, and I got half of my prediction right, because I picked Cardinals 31,
You did.
but I picked the Jets 28. So I had a feeling the defense had a game coming where they just were going to not play well because they haven't been great this year, but for the most part, it's like they've had good games and then just had like a really bad drive. They let up like the Patriots, they collapsed at the end there, or different games where they started slow and then they played much better the rest of the game. Like, they haven't had a full 60-minute meltdown this season until Sunday. And so, like, that was gonna come at some point. I actually thought the Jets offense was going to be able to hang with the Cardinals, though, because the Cardinals defense really is Buda Baker and a bunch of guys. Like, there's not a lot of stars on that defense. They played great Sunday, so I'm not taking anything away from them. But when we were looking at it like last week, I'm like, the Jets should be able to put up some points here on this team. And, so like the defense is the headline, clearly, the tackling and all that. But the offense also, Ryan, like, what? Such a weird game because they move the ball and, they couldn't get in the end zone. They only had one turnover, and that came on a fourth down. So it's kind of like, okay, the strip sack of Rodgers, that wasn't a big deal. They didn't commit a lot of penalties. So, like, if you just looked at it, if I didn't show you the score or anything, and you're like, oh, they had all these long drives. I can't remember how many, long drives they had. I think it was 1 3 and out, maybe all game, one turnover, very few penalties. Like, oh, offense played pretty well. But if you watched it, you're like, So that's just weird. Like, it's just, the offense is in a big funk, and I think the defense just had a really awful day. I don't think they're a great defense, but I don't think they're as bad as they look Sunday.
Yeah, and I think that was clearly the most shocking, and you bring up a great point. You said this defense was due for a clunker, and that's what it was. It was
Yeah.
a clunker, and we talked about it on last week's episode, and even during the prediction time, I said this is just a bad matchup. The Jets don't match up well against this Cardinals offense at all, just because of how well they run the ball,
Yeah.
how
That
mobile.
wasn't it, though. They threw the ball.
They threw the ball, which is
I mean,
again
they didn't really run the ball until the game was out of hand, and then they ran the ball a lot. But really early on, it was throwing the ball killed them.
right. But then the big thing that came about was the missed tackling
Not exactly,
and
yeah.
20
And
missed tackles.
I think the other part of it after I watched the film that stood out to me is how poor the underneath coverage was. Like linebackers were horrible in coverage. Like Sherwood Quincy really had a bad day in coverage because there's just a lot of little crossers in the middle, and you could see like a guy would catch it, and you could see the linebacker kind of like turn, like, oh my god, that was my guy. That's where I was supposed to be. The tight end always had a good day. That one play is just wide open where I think that was Quincy watching it. I don't know, but it looked like Quincy to me. Should have been on him. So they just had a horrible day in their like the kind of the second level coverage is how I would describe it.
So I think, Kaz, you bring up a great point about how the Jets, even in coverage, whether it was secondary, preliminary, they were not good at all against the Cardinals. They struggled. Even on that first drive, we saw the James Conner screen pass go all the way to the 1 yard line, and the effort from Sauce and DJ were not there. The film was not good for the defense at all. But that's kind of been the story with this Jets team of there's always something wrong, right? Like there's always something wrong on this team, whether it's the offense, defense, special teams. There's something not going right. And I don't know if it's a culture thing. I don't know if it's a coaching thing. Is it the roster's just not as good as we thought it was? Is it a combination of it all? But for you and how long you've been covering this Jets franchise, this is a team that a lot of fans are not a fan of right now because of how they're not even just how they're playing, but because how they're going about it, if that makes sense. So for you, how are you viewing how the Jets got to this point in the season at 3-7?
So it's a loaded question, Ryan. I mean, I think it comes down to the players the Jets expected to play well are not playing well, right? I think that's pretty simplistic, but if you go back to when we talked about this team in the off season, training camp, whatever, and you start going like, well, why do you think they can be good? I was like, okay, well, they have this defense, right? Like everyone started with the defense. This defense has been top 5 the last 2 years. They should have been so much better. You could play the game with what their record would have been if you scored 20 points, or we played all those games.
Yeah.
This defense hasn't played as well as the last 2 years. Sauce obviously has been talked about a lot, has not played as well as he did the last 2 years. Quincy Williams is not playing as well as he did last year. Quinnen has had some very, very good games. He has not had a complete season though, like he's had in the past. Obviously, Hassan Reddick was a piece of the equation who hasn't really been here, and he's only played what now 3 games. Jermaine Johnson got hurt. I think we got to remember that because I think it's easy to forget guys who get hurt early in the season. That's part of this. CJ Mosley fell off the cliff in terms of age and injury. Like he didn't look like himself when he was out there, and then he's been injured a lot. He's a key piece to this defense. Someone was saying to me the other day, like they really miss CJ's mind on the field right now. I'm like, yeah, but the problem is you got to play CJ's legs to get his mind on the field, and it looks like CJ's close to the end. And I hope I'm wrong. I like CJ. I hope I'm wrong. So that's the defense, right? Those guys have not played well. Then the other piece we said is, well, Brees Hall and Garrett Wilson are emerging stars who are going to be awesome for this team. Garrett has been. Brees has not. Brees has not had a good season. And then the big piece is, well, Aaron Rodgers as the quarterback. This is going to be great.
Yeah.
He hasn't looked like Aaron Rodgers. He has not had a good season. He's not played well. And so you add all that up and you get to 3-7. And in terms of the culture, it's funny because I was having a conversation with somebody with the Jets the other day. And like the culture thing is always tough to figure out. I am convinced now that winning creates culture. Culture does not create winning.
Interesting.
Just been around. Like, I think Saleh did a good job in terms of culture. I think he did a good job. Like, and I know he was not like whatever fiery enough for people in press conferences, but like I think Saleh held people accountable behind the scenes. I think he did a good job in terms of like setting the message right all the time, but like it just the winning didn't happen. And so I think if you're not winning, it doesn't matter what the messaging is. So I think winning sort of creates culture. And the other part of the culture thing is that there are some organizations who just have it. the Steelers for one, right? I've talked to guys who play for the Steelers, and like so when things aren't going well, you can kind of fall back on some of that, and the Jets just don't have that to fall back on. What the Jets have to fall back on is like, oh my god, here we go again,
Yeah.
and that happens every year. Like I had a veteran. This is back 2019, I want to say, and the Jets were falling apart that year, Gase's first year, and a guy who was on the team, who he was his first year on the team, and he had played somewhere else, and he said to me, he goes, "I just can't believe the feeling here is like it's not like fight back. It's just like, oh, there goes another season. We're over." Like, and he said like he could feel it in the building. The other guys say like this, the building just has a bad like. There's just been a lot of losing. I mean, so there's just a bad feeling when things go south. I think the tendency is just kind of throw your arms up, and so it's bad all around.
Yeah, I mean, I hear you on the winning builds culture, because winning is the ultimate deodorant, and it does cover up a lot of your stains and miscues and what you don't do well as a team. But I also I'm be remiss if I don't bring up the Lions example, right? Like, Dan Campbell set that culture. They weren't good in the beginning. Like they knew that they needed to build this thing from the
Yeah,
bottom up.
but the winning was what then took off
Right.
built the culture. I think if he Dan Campbell could do all he wanted to do, and if they didn't win, what was his second year they started to win, right? I kind
Yes.
of remember it.
They started to win games in the second
Yeah,
year.
that reinforces the message. Like if you just have the message and you're not winning, players are going to tune you out eventually, and they would have tuned Dan Campbell out. Like look at Belichick; he's the ultimate example, right? He struggled in Cleveland, okay, and then in New England, he was in trouble that second year, and then all of a sudden Tom Brady became a player. Like they tell the story of him. Can't remember who he was talking to a Jets coach before that Jets game, saying he was worried about his job, and then boom, it turned around and they became the example of culture, right? But it was the winning built that. Yeah, you have to have the right messaging. It's
Right.
not like you can just win. But I think most guys who become a head coach are pretty good at the messaging aspect of it.
Right. And I think you've highlighted plenty about you think that Salah had the right message,
Yeah,
and perhaps it wasn't perceived well, clearly, by the fans. And it wasn't perceived
they
well
didn't
from
win.
Woody Johnson, and they didn't win, right?
They
The,
didn't
the
win.
results the results were on the
Yeah,
field. And it's the
yeah,
same thing that's going on with Joe Douglas. Like why people are he's 30 and 64 now as the GM. Like it's that winning is what's going to ultimately choose how this franchise, like how
yeah,
people are going to view this franchise. Um, but I also think a big part of this too is the scheme, and like you said, the players can you put them in the right position to make plays? You're having down years from a lot of guys that you highlighted. You had the big injury in Jermaine Johnson. I just wonder though, because are we, and I guess we as in fans, are we overvaluing just how good this roster was heading into this year? Because let's
yeah,
not forget, this team never won with the
yeah,
Sala regime and Joe Douglas regime. Like the
yeah.
roster, these guys never won.
Where I think I think you guys make the biggest mistake, and this always happens, is you hear a name and you're like, oh, but you like don't look at the age.
Mm,
And so like, oh, look, like Devontae, I think I I know like he's had some good moments, right? Like Texans game, he had good moment. And like I think he opened things up for Garrett, the Patriots game, but I just he's not Devontae Adams of 2020 or whatever. And Tyron Smith is not Tyron Smith of 2021 or 2019. And so I think that's the trick. And it happens in all sports, right? Like Kevin Garnett comes to the Nets and Paul Pierce, like, oh, it's gonna be great. Like, no, you, it doesn't work. Like this whole like fantasy football thing doesn't work where you go out and get like these old players and put them on team. The Rams, I guess, is probably the best example of where it kind of worked, where they won the Super Bowl, but who was their best player? It was Aaron Donald, who they drafted, right? So they had a good core in place and then added a few veteran pieces. I think that's where this roster got a little overvalued. And I don't think people were wrong to think like Brees was going to have a huge season. It just hasn't happened for whatever reason. And yeah, and guys are just having a down year.
yeah, that's the player aspect. I wonder now about the coaching part too.
Yeah,
It's a major shift. It's a major shift when you fire a head coach in season.
yeah,
Um, Jeff Ulbrich steps into this role that he's never done before. while he was being named by guys like Tony Romo and people on the broadcast, and his name is floating out there, like this guy could be a potential head coaching candidate in the future because how well the Jets defense had played the last 2 years. He steps into this role and he seems like, I shouldn't say seems, it is overwhelming for him as the head coach of this team.
Yeah.
And I also question the offensive side of the ball. We saw Nate Hackett. No one wanted him. The Jets were the only team that wanted him. And now it's Todd Downing's turn after Hackett loses all responsibilities. And the offense just isn't performing. So the staff that's to put together now, it's not a good staff.
I think there's some really good coaches on defense, right? I do. I think Aaron Wycott is a really good coach. I think Tony Owen is a really good coach. I think Marquand Manuel is a good coach. I think Jeff Holbrook's a good coach, right? So, I don't want to say, oh my gosh, that they're all bad coaches. I do think that Woody Johnson did not understand the effect it was gonna have. I think he just was tired of Robert Saleh. I think that was a personal decision. I think he didn't like him. I think he saw the penalties and felt like, oh, this is his fault. Like, let's get rid of him. And yeah, it hasn't worked. I asked Aaron Rodgers yesterday about it. He says, well, you're looking at through wins and losses. Yeah. Please don't tell me how great practice has been, please. Just please stop with practice. So,
it's falling on deaf ears, Coz.
Yeah, I know. If I could give any advice to players and coaches, it's don't talk about how good practice is when you're losing, because it just drives people crazy. But yeah, so yeah, the offensive staff, I think, has had questions since Saleh got here and hired who he did. I thought Mike LaFleur was questioned, but I would have stuck with Mike LaFleur. He and Zach Wilson just couldn't get along, and so he was the one who paid the price there. But I thought LaFleur did some good things, and I think, LaFleur with Mike White looked like a lot better coach than LaFleur with Zach Wilson. They just didn't mesh at all. I'm not pinning this on Todd Downing, really, Ryan. Like, other than I thought he should have run the ball when they had the ball at the 3-yard line the other day. Other than that, I wasn't like, oh my God, this play call is atrocious. And I think I've said this before. I have a very hard time evaluating play calling when Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback.
It's crazy that it
I
doesn't
don't
get
know.
talked enough.
There's no way they don't want to run the ball more.
That's you say that about Breece Hall. You're like, Breece Hall is having a down season, right? But you saw the beginning of the game. They were running the ball well.
Yeah. I feel like he checks out and runs a lot. I don't know it. No one's going to say it, but I just wonder how much he checks out of the run, and like he has a ton of control at the line of scrimmage. So it's very hard. It's a lot different when it was Zach Wilson or Sam Darnold, and like you knew they didn't really have much power at the line of scrimmage. So it was the play caller. Aaron Rodgers has all the power, so I have a hard time banging Todd Downing around on this. I think. There wasn't play calling in that game where I'm like, oh, this is atrocious. Other than I thought they should have run the ball at the goal line. But yeah, I mean, look, when you're 3-7, nothing's good. So everything's going to get hammered. But I think there's plenty of blame to go around here.
Yeah. It's frustrating on a year that, a lot of fans were looking forward to. And that this was supposed to be the year.
Yeah. I mean, I can't remember a season like this. Trying to think. There's been disappointing seasons of injury. Like last year was a disappointing season because of Rodgers' injury, but I think you guys were all kind of like, well, it was an injury. Like, what are you going to do? There was plenty of frustration, and clearly with Zach Wilson and everything last year. But this one is like so much different. A little bit like 2011 to me, which was like they were coming off the 2 championship games. There was high expectations that year, and the team didn't perform. But that team wasn't this bad. That team went right to the wire and went 8-8. So I'm trying to remember of a season that like 2016, I guess.
2016, I was going to say the follow up to the.
Yeah, that's similar, but even that season, I feel like you guys weren't like, oh my God, this is a Super Bowl team. Like It was, hey, who knows if things go right, they can make the playoffs with Fitz and Marshall and Decker, and But this was huge expectations. The other difference between 2016 and this year is 8 years. Like it's the playoff drought was only 6 years at that point. I was just looking up, Ryan, like the longest playoff droughts in NFL history, because we're getting up the list with the Jets here. If the Jets get to 14, you're getting up the list.
But there's only one man that really we could talk about that is If you wanted to blame sole responsibility because he does own the team and he makes
Yeah,
these choices, it's Woody Johnson, and this is where we're at right now. So that's how we got to this point in the season. We've talked about the players that haven't played well. We've talked about the coaches. We've talked about how this team was put together. But now the real big question is, Coz, and this is the unfortunate part again, where I bring up we're talking off-season talk now because the Jets have forced us to put this. There's no one else. Like we're not choosing to say, yeah, let's bring up coaches that we can hire in the offseason. Let's bring up GM candidates. This is what this franchise has done to the fan base. We got to talk about the future and where they go from here. So I'll start off with Coz's call of the week. You asked Aaron Rodgers yesterday during the scrum, are you going to come back in 2025? And I'm going to play the sound for all the fans here watching this show, and then we're going to react to it.
You've talked about wanting to play beyond this year before. Has the way this season gone for you or as a team changed that thought at all?
Not really. Not for the negative. No, not really.
Do you still want to play in 2020?
I think so, yeah.
not
What'd you make
emphatic.
that?
Well, I mean, I obviously knew I was going to ask that going in, and I thought he'd probably kick the can down the road on me and say, like, I'm not really focused on that right now. Like, I'll make that decision at the end of the season. He didn't. So, like, you give him credit. Like, the guy, he speaks his mind. It wasn't emphatic, though, Ryan. It wasn't like, there was no doubts. I think so, yeah. So, look, I take him at his word. He thinks he wants to play in 2025. Look, there's a long way to go still in this season, and I think what happens with the Jets could influence his decision too. Like, does he want to be part of the new regime? Does he think he later gave a pretty strong endorsement of Ulbrich? So, like, if this thing is getting torn down, and he's going to have a new head coach and a new offensive coordinator and like a new system, like, I can't see Aaron Rodgers wanting to sign up for that. So I do think, while it's fun to kick around right now, I don't think this is written in stone, right? That he wants to come back next year and wants to go back to the Jets for sure.
So that is, we were talking about this at the post yesterday when you asked that question and we saw the sound from Rodgers and we're like, oh man, like I don't know. That's a guy that doesn't sound sure of himself. He's coming back because he says, I think so. Yeah. But then he did also give you that answer. Like you said, the contract is what's interesting. And to your point, we should probably ask you, are they going to go in a new regime? Is there going to be a new GM and a new head coach coming in 2025?
Yeah, I think so right now. Like, the way it looks, if there's some miraculous run here, things can change. But sitting here on November 14th, I would bet my money on a new GM and new head coach. So, and that would probably mean no Aaron Rodgers in my mind. Things can happen, but it's just hard for me to envision. Like I said, he talked about the hiring of Nate Hackett. We know why Nate Hackett was hired, right? They were already thinking about Aaron Rodgers. Who are they going to hire now? Who are they going to hire now? Like, he's not going to want to learn a new system at 41 years old. There's no shot. And if you're coming in, if you're the coach and GM, like, do you want to sign up for that? Like, he hasn't played well, right? Like, you're not signing up for Aaron Rodgers MVP. You're signing up for Aaron Rodgers, like, who's middle of the pack quarterback right now. So, and you're probably going to get 1 year out of him. And then what? You're starting over in 2026. It doesn't kind of add up to me. So I don't think Aaron Rodgers will be back next year, but we'll see how it plays out.
So you say we'll see how it plays out. I do wonder, he does have, so the contract, the way it works right now with Rodgers, is it the team has an option to pick up for him next year? It's not guaranteed, his contract next year?
I'd have to look closer. Now, he's got money next year.
Right. So, let's say if he wanted to retire, I believe he's due $49 million still left on his deal.
That's dead. That would be the dead money.
Correct.
On his deal. Yeah. Like, so, I mean, forget about the cash. Like, I'll try to call up his contract.
Okay. So,
but he's, yeah. So, like, it's $49 million in dead money next year. He has no money guaranteed next season. This is all from Over the Cap, our friends over there.
I believe your colleague Rich Cimini had said that it was a team option they could pick up next year.
There's a $35 million option.
$35 million option
exercise in 2025.
Right. So let's say, and this is the big part of the equation we still haven't even brought up yet, the ownership. Let's say Woody does go to UK again for another 4 years in June,
Yeah.
July. The decision we made already by then, right, of whether or not they're going to pick up Rodgers'
Yes.
option.
Yeah.
Does Rodgers play a big part? Let's say he says, I want to come back in 2025. No matter what happens the rest of the season, I want to still play because that's a lot of money to leave still on that contract. And who knows if he wants to go out this way, right? Does he convince ownership to allow him to have an influence on who they're going to hire as the next head coach of the New York Jets?
No, he does not. I think the days of Aaron Rodgers' influence with this organization are over. I don't think he's got much sway with ownership at this point. I think, you got to perform to have that kind of influence. Now, like, would they let him talk to the guys or something like that? And like, sure, but I don't think it's going to be like he's going to be heavily involved in the coaching search at all.
Well, the reason I bring that up is because let's be real. The Jets are a business, right? They've already upped season tickets for next year. They know they're losing the fans' interest right now because of how this season has gone.
Yeah.
Rodgers will still sell tickets next year. I think he will because of the name alone.
Okay.
If Woody and Chris are getting advice from Jaime, the president of the Jets, to say this quarterback will still bring us the most fans back into the seats and our best opportunity to sell tickets, could that influence a lot of the decisions we're seeing made here for this Jets franchise by keeping Aaron Rodgers and picking up that option?
I'm going to say no.
Okay.
I know the three guys you just talked about, some of them better than others, right? But those three guys want to win football games and they want to fix this. Like, they haven't made the best decisions. It hasn't worked, but it isn't for lack of trying. I'd say that. I know, like, this town we talked about, like, Mets fans complain about the Wilpons, right? Not spending money. You can't complain about that with the Jets. Like, Woody's done everything, personnel wise. I think that they've asked, and that's not the problem. So I don't think they'll be influenced by ticket sales. I really don't. I think in their minds, what's going to sell tickets is winning. And like what sells tickets in 2000, not just 2025, but 26, 27, 28, 29 is, hey, we got to turn this around and become a really good team. And then ticket sales will be fine. So I think it'll be solely focused on how we put the best team out there and not really worrying about tickets. I think that's could come up in a conversation, but I don't think that's the primary driver here.
Okay, so that's the ownership aspect of this. Now it comes to, how do you pitch this to a GM and head coach, right? How are you going to pitch this to them and say, we need you to come take this job? And we don't know whether or not, and that's the other thing. Are you going to ask that head coach and GM, no matter what, like, do you want Aaron Rodgers back? Or are they telling them, we need Aaron Rodgers to be the quarterback next year? We can draft a quarterback, but that's something we'll discuss down the road. Again, there's a lot of unknown questions here.
I think with the general manager, you're asking them what they think. I don't think you're saddling them with that. Like, you have to take this guy. I think you're going to ask them what they think. I think it's going to be up to them. I think that's going to be part of the evaluation. But it's a tough sell to me, Ryan. It's a tough sell because they're not in good shape, and there's going to be some pain to pay for Aaron Rodgers whenever he does leave. Like, what is it? There's the void years are
correct.
26, 27, 28. There's, void years there that he's going to count, 35 million, 21 million, $7 million against the cap. So
thank God the cap goes up every year.
Yeah. I mean, look, the cap is fungible. And I saw Jason from OTC the other day talked about how much money they have, and they'll have a lot of money, but, there is going to be a little bit of a tax to pay for this run here, attempted run, I should say.
Yeah.
I don't think it's it's an easy sell to somebody, but there's only 32 jobs, so there's always people are going to take them, and you make a lot of money in these jobs, so they'll be able to find guys, but it's not an easy sell.
No, it isn't. I appreciate you saying that and I'm listening to you because I don't know where this is going, and I don't think anyone knows where this is going, right? I have this gut feeling that when Rodgers said that to you yesterday, he means it, and he's going to be back here next year. It just feels that way. Even no matter how this season ends, the Jets, I feel like, will pick up his option, and perhaps they can convince a GM and head coach, listen, we can do this one more year with a better culture, hopefully, around him, a better coaching staff around him. But let's think about the future and how we're going to build this to the future too. And that's my hope. But hope kills a lot of things.
How would
And
you who's calling the offense?
you talking about for potential
If you're
coach?
keeping Aaron Rodgers, Ryan, like you're gonna go, oh, Aaron, here, meet pick Ben Johnson.
Ben Johnson's not coming to the Jets.
Meet Ben Johnson, all right? But he's the dream offensive coordinator,
Yeah,
right?
I don't
Meet
think he
Ben
takes
Johnson.
this job.
Okay. Here's his playbook, Aaron. Go study it. Like, come back. We'll see you. We'll see you in April to work on the playbook. Like, man, I don't know. I don't know. I feel like that'd be interesting.
It would be interesting. So that brings about now coaching candidates. We can talk about GM candidates in the offseason, but I want to talk about coaching candidates because you wrote in your Sports Plus piece about the Jets' potential head coaching candidates. I'm not going to go through all of them, but the one that you picked out was Matt Nagy, which is interesting because it generated a lot of reaction from fans.
Thought it might.
Yeah, I know you thought it might.
And to be clear, this is not who I would hire. It's who I think makes the most sense that's gonna get hired.
Okay. So can you expand a little bit more about that Matt Nagy, why you think he would make the most sense and in what they would do?
Thinking like Woody.
Yeah.
All right. So number one, I think they're gonna want a coach who has experience as a head coach. I think that's gonna be something they go into thinking. They'll interview guys who are first-time coordinators, but I don't think they're going to go the hot coordinator route because it's stuff what we talked about. They're going to want somebody who's going to be a culture changer, all that stuff. So they're going to want somebody who's done this before. Okay, Nagy was with the Bears. He made the playoffs twice with the Bears, so he had a winning record. His record is not as bad as I think people perceive. He really didn't have a good quarterback there. He had Mitch Trubisky, and then the last year he had Justin Fields. So. Right, he had some success without the star quarterback. He comes from the Chiefs. I think that's going to be attractive to Woody, taking something from the best organization in the NFL right now, taking a piece, and then part of that, Ryan, is let me paint a picture for you. It's late evening. Woody's sitting on his Miranda in Florida, like just maybe sipping a cocktail. The phone rings. He picks up. Ambassador, this is Patrick Mahomes calling. I have the guy for you. We all remember the Peyton Manning call, right? This feels like to me, Patrick Mahomes gives his seal of approval, the Chiefs say, and then on the other side of it, we talk about, Ben Johnson isn't coming here. Mike Vrabel isn't coming here. Like, guys with options are the common thought around the NFL is guys with options are not coming here. Matt Nagy's not going to have a lot of options. So this is going to be appealing to him, I think. And so all that added up to me when I was like, oh, this makes a lot of sense in my mind. So that's where I'm coming from, Ryan. And yeah, and then I wrote, I actually was saying it yesterday. I'll tell the story. So I wrote it in the newsletter and I was saying it yesterday in the media room. And Connor Hughes was like, did you tweet that? And I was like, no. He's like, you got to tweet that. He's like, you'll get plenty of engagements with that. So so he inspired my tweet to put it out there.
It certainly did inspire a lot of reaction. I do the post-game live show with Frankie and I had asked you before we got on this because he mentioned John Gruden and there's so many obstacles there too. There's any names I could throw out there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I didn't include Gruden. I probably should have. The Gruden thing to me is like,
it feels like a Woody Johnson move.
It doesn't to me though. What Woody Johnson move with a coaching hire has ever been like that? Like he doesn't do that. He's
a former head coach. He brings a quote unquote winning pedigree because he's won a Super Bowl. He brings an offensive system.
22 years ago. Like, okay. It's like you may as well hire Rex if you're gonna do that. This guy has been out of it for a long. I know the second Raider stint isn't that long ago, but his success is a long time ago.
Right.
I just
Would you
know,
agree though he'd be instantly be the best offensive mind the Jets have hired in like the last 20 years?
well, geez, that's a low bar.
Right?
No, I don't think he's like I think people romanticize John Gruden.
Okay.
Call up his record, Ryan. Like call up his record and go year by year on his record. He gets this you know, he was very successful early on with the Raiders and the Bucks, but it didn't go well for a long time.
If I go back
Yeah.
to 2000, so after a Super Bowl,
2002, right? Super Bowl, yep.
so after the Super Bowl, if I go from that to 2021, 7-9, 5-11, 11-5, 4-12, 9-7, 9-7, 4-12, 7-9, 8-8, 3-2 before getting fired, where they went to the playoffs that year.
Yeah. It's not not the reputation he has. It's it's people will talk about him, like he's 117 and 112 as a head coach in the regular season. So I'm not saying he's been a bad coach, but it's not like I feel like it's getting romanticized a little bit. So and I don't know. I just feel like that's, and besides Barstool hired him, Ryan. He's got a job. So.
I mean, that hasn't stopped
So
players. Pat Beverly has a Barstool podcast and plays. I mean, that Aaron Rodgers goes on McAfee every week. I mean, that you can do whatever media responsibilities you want.
Not your head coach, but here's the thing though, Ryan, beyond the record.
Yes.
Okay? This guy was fired,
Mm-hmm.
or I think he resigned, maybe. I can't remember, in with the Raiders.
Basically, Mark Davis was forced, quote unquote, to fire him because the NFL made him fire him pretty much.
Yeah, I mean, but the emails are real.
Yeah.
No one's ever denied those emails. Like, how that's going to be tough for an organization to hire someone after he sent those emails, and especially in 2024. That's the first question in the press conference is about those emails. So I think that's a tough one to overcome for him.
Yeah, no doubt. So I should say the two candidates that I really, really think are realistic and could take this job and would instantly be an upgrade. Number one, you know who I'm going to talk about. It's Mike Vrabel. Mike Vrabel is the guy to get because he has established a culture of winning. He's done it he's had Mike LaFleur as Matt LaFleur as an offensive coordinator. He's had Arthur Smith as an offensive coordinator. He knows how to hire and find good offensive minds. Yeah. And he's established a culture of winning, and he's done it with Ryan freaking Tannehill. Can you imagine if you can get him a better quarterback situation here in New York, that could be?
Why would he take this job?
Well, I mean, like you said, one of 32 jobs.
No, he's a guy in my mind. He's number one on the list.
You don't think Ben Johnson's number one on the list this cycle?
1-1A, right?
1-1A.
But what I've heard is people aren't even sure Ben Johnson's going to take a job.
No, I know.
Right. So, but Vrabel's like, if you want to say he's 2 behind Ben Johnson, fine. But that means he's going to have 6 interviews. He's probably going to have offers from 3 teams, something like that. He's going to have options, is my point, Ryan. I just don't see, and I don't know this. I don't know what his relationship is with Bill Belichick, but obviously he played for him a long time. That's his mentor, Belichick is going to tell him to stay the hell away from the Jets. So, like, if he's listening to him, and I don't know if he is, that aspect of it, he obviously has a lot of familiarity with the Jets from his years in New England. I just can't see him taking this job. I agree with you. He'd be great.
Back up the Brinks truck. Yeah. Give him all the money. I honestly, I would make him the highest paid coach. He is worth it. He's a culture setter. He's what this team needs. A culture, a real culture. He's number one. And number 2, Todd Monken. Offensive mind. I know he'd be a first-time head coach, but he's proven to have success at the collegiate and professional level now. He knows how to work with a lot of different quarterbacks. And he interviewed for the job when Saleh was interviewing for the job, right? Or is it the Adam Gase? It was the Gase.
Yeah.
So again, Monken could have gotten the job possibly if Peyton Manning didn't step in and force his way. So maybe we'll get that. Yeah. Maybe we'll get Todd Monken supposed to get this job again, and Patrick Mahomes will call up Woody Johnson and say, "Hey, listen, go hire Matt Nagy instead."
Monken was not getting the job, no matter Peyton Manning, he wasn't getting the job at that point. Here's the question with Monken though is what you just said about Vrabel. I don't think any of us really know Todd Monken. We don't know, is he a culture setter? Is he an alpha male? Is he going to come in and change things? Like we don't like you're going off of him off of offense, which I get. But I think the question with him would be, is he the CEO? Is he and that's why I think Woody's going to lean toward guys who've done the job before, because you can evaluate that part of the job a little bit easier. I think we all thought Robert Saleh was going to be great at that coming from San Francisco, but you just don't really know until they get in the job. So that part's hard for me, Monken. I think he's 58. So he's been around a while. And so like that, I think that's attractive. Like he's not a guy who has had one good year as a coordinator and you're hiring. He's had a lot of experience, but like Ryan, it's hard. It's hard to hire these guys. And like, you think, like I was thinking about this, like who's the guy out there who's like culture, like screams culture right now, like
Dan
sets
Campbell.
the tone. I don't even think it's Dan Campbell.
Really?
I think it's Mike Tomlin. Right?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. He, like you said, like, right? Well, yeah, like he is the guy. Like Mike Tomlin is the guy. And think about how he was hired. He had 1 year as a coordinator. And he just wowed them in the interview, and they saw it. They saw the leadership oozing from him. That's what the Jets need. Like that, they just need a guy like that. And so I think they got to cast a wide net and not worry about the perception, because I don't think Tomlin was probably like a home run hire with Steelers fans at the time. They probably didn't know who he was. I think they've got to just go out and like really interview a lot of people and find that guy who just oozes leadership.
Yeah, I mean, there was that opportunity last year too at Harbaugh. I feel like that was a missed one too, because that guy oozes culture too.
He does, but I don't think he was coming here.
No, okay.
I think he wanted, I think he knew he wanted the Chargers job, and that was kind of like that was where he was going. The time you could have hired Harbaugh to me was back.
Yes,
he was reeling. I want to say it was when they hired Saleh. I wrote that year because I talked to people in Michigan, and they thought he was going to get fired in Michigan that year. Remember, and so there was some thought then that he might be in the market, and I thought that's where the Jets could have applied the full court press and tried to get him, but he ended up re-signing with Michigan at that point.
Finally, for me, if you want to really change, and I wonder, this is a big philosophical thing when it comes to franchises. Do the Jets need a president of football operations that is actually a football mind, that has been there, done that, been around the game forever, like a John Dorsey type, where
I think that's the GM. I don't think you need that above them. Like I think that's the GM's job. I don't know, like where are you thinking of someone that like where it worked?
Dorsey, with Cleveland and Kansas City, helped build both those cultures.
He was the GM. He was the GM.
But he was
No, he was the GM in both those places. Yeah.
Right, but
he got fired.
He got fired, but again, that's a man who I think knows football, knows how to like find a good GM, go find good
He wasn't
coaches.
the team. I'm talking. Give me the example where there was a president of operations above a GM, where like, and not where the guy like moved into that role. Like Ozzie Newsome is sort of like that in Baltimore now,
right?
Advisor, but Ozzie's kind of retired. But like, I can't think of they hired Holmgren to do that in Cleveland, it didn't work.
Right.
Like it doesn't. They hired Parcells to do that in Miami. It didn't really work. Like it's an interesting idea. I think the GM is the guy that does that though. And Dorsey did that in Kansas City. Dorsey did in Cleveland as the GM. And then the thing with Dorsey is he wears out his welcome wherever he goes for whatever reason. But like
for whatever reason, but the man still builds winners. He builds winners.
He does. Yeah. I mean, like if you want to hire, like I think he's in somebody's personnel department now.
Yeah, he's helping out. Who's he helping out now?
Detroit, maybe. In Detroit.
He might be working with Detroit.
Yeah, and like, yeah, he's a great football mind, but I don't think you need that. I think I think it's more that's hire the GM to do that job.
Yeah, he was general manager for both the Chiefs and the Browns, and now he's an advisor for the Detroit Lions. That's a guy who I would go get as GM too if I were going to talk about that. But that's besides the point. Coz, final thoughts before we get to the. We're going to be quick on the game itself this weekend, but any final thoughts about this franchise, where they're at right now? What can you say to Jets fans about where we're at and where we're going here?
Yeah, it's grim right now, Ryan. Like, it's grim. Like, you got to get through the season. I know we're talking about it, but there are 7 games left. And you got to get through that, see how it goes. 'Cause things can change in 2 months. But, I think one thing we haven't touched on, and sort of what you're hitting on with it, I wouldn't hire someone as the president of operations. But my biggest question going into this search, the offseason, whether I think it's going to be GM and coach, is who's the one conducting it with Woody. And, to me, I would want someone with fresh eyes from outside the organization who doesn't have any biases within the organization to come and help me do it if I'm Woody. And who does he get to do that? Like, we know, like, Charlie Casserly and Ron Wolf did it in 15 with them. He hired a consultant in 2013 to hire Idzik. So I have some thoughts on that, which I'm probably going to write at some point, and then we can talk about. But that to me is that's an interesting question going in the offseason, is just who exactly is conducting this search along with Woody.
Totally. And it'll be something we're going to pay attention to here going in the future. Coz, we do have a game. The Jets Colts.
1:00 Sunday.
1:00 was a 8:00 primetime game. Thank God they got that out of there. That was a smart flex by the NFL there.
The rest of the season, Sundays at 1:00. My favorite, right?
Oof, finally getting a routine now too. But unfortunately, a lot of Jets fans are checked out. Anyway, the Jets are somehow favored in this matchup versus the Colts. They're 4-point favorite in this game. For you, is there anything that you're paying attention to that's worth fans to watch or look out for between the Jets and Colts? Anthony Richardson's going to be the starter this weekend, which is interesting. The Colts go back to him instead of Joe Flacco.
Yeah, here's the thing, Ryan. You guys, we're checked out. You guys will be crazy Sunday afternoon at 2:00 with whatever's going on. Yeah, you will.
I'll be crazy about my bets.
You'll be. The Mets aren't playing.
No, the bets. My bets.
Oh, the bets. Oh,
bets.
Bets.
By the way, I was right about Kyler Murray anytime touchdown.
Yes.
Michael Clemens. Woof. Woof.
Yeah, we can talk about him at some point.
Oh man.
Yeah, I look. There's still a lot of season left. You only get 17 games a year, Ryan. You guys should be paying attention into it. The Anthony Richardson thing is interesting to me. Obviously, Jets have had a tough time with running quarterbacks the last few weeks, so he could have some success there. But I think the Jets look good Sunday, Ryan. I think they're going to look good against the Colts. I think they're going to come out, and I think you guys aren't going to completely be sucked back in, but there's going to be a little hope going in the bye week of, oh, well, the Broncos lost to the Falcons. The Bengals lost to the Chargers. Like, it's not over. We can still, there's still a path, and there'll be hope. So am I making my prediction, Ryan? You want my prediction?
No. I want to do over-unders first, but I do want to respond to what you just said. I promise you, Coz, I checked out after that Patriots game. I'll watch strictly as a analyst and just like watching like the film and stuff and just making notes of like, that was a dumb play decision. That was a good play decision. Like, where the hell was this player on that play design? Question critically, right? That's how I view now this team. I'm not going to be a fan anymore. Like when Garrett Wilson catches a touchdown, I'm like, cool, great. The Jets going to sign him in the offseason, re-sign him, like give him an extension. That's things I'll be thinking about.
Okay.
That's how I'm looking at it now. I don't care if they win games. I really don't. I actually hope they lose the rest
If
of the
they
games.
win 5 in a row, are you sucked back in?
5 in a row. So you're telling me they're going to be
8-7.
8-7.
Going
How the
into
hell are they
Buffalo.
pulling that off? They have to go to Buffalo.
The Buffalo's the next game.
So you're saying 5 in a row going in? We have to go
Going
to
into
Buffalo.
Buffalo. So they beat the Colts, the Seahawks, the Dolphins, the Jaguars, the Rams. Boom, 5. 8-7. Heading to Buffalo on December 29th. Are you sucked back in?
Yeah. That's not
At
happening.
least you're honest. I know it's not happening. I wanted to give you a scenario where you'd be sucked back in because you said you checked out.
I am checked out. It sucks, man. I hate being checked out. I don't want to be checked out on this team, but that's what they do to us. Koz, believe it or not, you had a rough week last week. Just because
I thought the offense was going to do well.
I know 1-6 in player props last
I had
week.
to come back to earth at some point, Ryan.
Hey, listen, you're still up 8 units. You're 37, 29, and 1 this year. That's still plus 800. Let's start off with Aaron Rodgers, 239.5 pass yards, 1.5 passing touchdowns.
This is where I went wrong last week. I'm gonna go over.
Okay. Coz has got him going over. He has good. You have faith in the Jets this weekend. They're going to get something going here. Breece Hall, 71.5 rush yards. He was 66.5 last week. They got him more for this week.
Under.
Okay. Breece Hall continues to struggle, or maybe they just stop running the ball again. Garrett Wilson, 65.5 receiving yards. This went under last week because they didn't throw him the ball.
Over.
And finally, Jonathan Taylor, 87.5 rush yards.
High number. I'm going to go under.
The Jets defense all of a sudden is going to stop the run?
They are. They're going to be ahead. Indy's going to have to throw the ball, Ryan. They're going to be ahead all game. Indy's going to have to throw.
Okay.
And can I give you a prop?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm going to go Sauce Gardner, 0.5 interceptions over this week.
you got him having an interception this week, huh?
Interception, and he pulls out his cell phone and tweets about it.
Man, I love that you defend Sauce, and I know I have a feeling that you think, not think, but this guy is a good guy. He's young, he's learning a lot on the job. He's having a down year by all accounts, but I always think about that Herm Edwards video. Just don't hit send. Don't press send. Just stay off social media. It's a cesspool.
Yes. Yeah. And as I told Sauce, none of us pay attention to Rich Cimini. You can't pay attention to him. So,
I'm going to clip that and send that, tweet that for Rich.
Oh, so Rich heard me say it there. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, he's 24 years old, Ryan. He's a good dude. And he's made some bad choices with social media, but he's frustrated. You can tell he's just frustrated. And I also wonder if he's ever gone through anything like this before, because you think about his path. He was a 3-star recruit in high school. He wasn't a star in terms of top level. Goes to Cincinnati. He's like the 8th cornerback on the depth chart. Wins the job. So he was like out of nowhere guy. Became a star at Cincinnati. He's kind of an overachiever, and then he comes here and he's successful right away. He's never really faced criticism before. I'm going to guess. So that can be tough.
Yeah, it definitely can be, and we're seeing it go what he's going through right now. Predictions: we both took the Cardinals last week. You're now 6-4. You won 2 in a row. I finally got back on the win streak here. Got a win. So I'm going to start off with you. Predictions: Jets Colts. Jets favor -4.
Here come the Jets, Ryan. I think they're going to put together a good game this week. I think they're going to lead the entire game, wire to wire. Like I said, I'm predicting a Sauce interception. I'm predicting 2 interceptions for the team in the game, doubling their total for the year. Sauce gets 1. I think the offense, not crazy prolific, but better than it's been. I'm going to go Jets 27, Colts 17.
Okay, you got Jets winning by 10 over there. I'm going to go with the Colts. As soon as they moved Anthony Richardson, that was the demise for the Jets here. They can't stop the run. They can't. Jonathan Taylor's going to have a field day with this Jets. I'm getting flashbacks. What was that, 2021?
2021, Salah's first year.
Salah's first year when Jonathan Taylor went roughshod against this Jets defense, and now you're doing it.
Ryan, they're wearing pads this week. They're practicing tackling. Elbert did a tackling presentation.
Yeah, he did that last week too. How'd that go?
They're going to tackle.
20 missed tackles last week.
He did it for the whole team this week, though. So now Garrett Wilson knows how to tackle.
Yeah, this culture, I don't like this team. I don't like Rodgers. I don't like what they're doing. I don't like the attitude a lot of these players have. The Colts are hungry. They're going back to Richardson. I know it's a questionable decision, but dude's athletic as hell. And I could just see him again running for a touchdown, just like Kyler Murray did. Read option. Shane Steichen turned on how do you say his last name? Steichen. Shane Steichen definitely turned on that Jets Cardinals tape and said, "Oh, we're going back to Richardson. Get Joe out of there. We're gonna go run the ball 80 times this game." I got Colts 24, Jets 17.
24-17. That's your score.
Yep.
That's the
Go-
one you always pick.
We're going back to the schneid. 24-17.
All right.
All right. Coz,
Wow.
that's a
Colts.
show.
Colts.
We'll talk. We'll do one show during the bye week. Yeah. Let's
Yeah.
catch up during the bye week, see where this team's at, and we'll go from there. Yeah, man.
All right. Yep. We're not quitting on the season, Ryan.
No, we're not. We're gonna be here. Coz, appreciate you as always, man.
All right. Thanks, Ryan.
You got it.